Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, where each episode we bring you a fresh and insightful interview featuring one of the film industry's top directors, conducted by one of their peers. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. This episode features an exclusive conversation with director Randal Kleiser at a DGA Special Projects Committee event to celebrate the 40th anniversary of Grease. One of the highest-grossing and most acclaimed movie musicals of all time, the 1978 film brought together John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John as Danny and Sandy, star-crossed lovers who fall for one another during summer vacation and unwittingly end up members of rival cliques at the same high school in the fall. His other directing credits include the 70mm 3D film Honey, I Shrunk the Audience, and the feature films The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, The Blue Lagoon, Summer Lovers, Flight of the Navigator, White Fang, Big Top Pee-wee, Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, North Shore, and the 1996 AIDS drama It's My Party. Following a special 4K restoration screening of Grease at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles last month, Mr. Kleiser sat down with director Jeremy Kagan to discuss the making of the film along with several others in his filmography. During their conversation, Mr. Kleiser talks about how the ending to the drive-in scene featuring the song Sandy was a happy accident, why he likes to play music on the set in order to maintain a calm atmosphere, and shares the first place he usually goes when he arrives on a set.
Wow, a standing ovation. Thank you so much. I've never had that.
Well, it's well-deserved indeed. Are you serious? You only had 5 weeks prep on this?
5 weeks of prep, yes, 53 days of shooting.
How many?
53.
What did you do in the 5 weeks? There seems to be so much to prepare for. Did you go back to Bob Wise and get help?
Well, you know, Pat Birch had done the Broadway show before, so she had, and a lot of these people had been in the Broadway play. You know, like one of them is here tonight, Barry Pearl, who played Duty. Where are you, Barry? He's back there. Duty. And Barry is one of those people that was in the play, and so Pat had worked with them before, and so a lot of it had been done ahead of time.
Yeah, but yes, staged for a proscenium stage, but not for where you're going to put the camera and how you are going to stage.
Well, in those 5 weeks, we had a soundstage at Paramount, and we had a piano and a drum guy. We had actually Cubby Broccoli from the Mouseketeers was our drummer, and that was exciting for me because I used to watch him on Mickey Mouse Club as a kid. But anyhow, so 5 weeks Pat rehearsed with them during the day. During the mornings, she rehearsed the musical numbers, and I rehearsed the dialogue in the afternoons, and then at lunchtime we would do the transitions.
And when you would see the musical number staged, were you storyboarding at the time? How were you beginning to say, okay, this is the way I'm going to mount this?
I worked with Bill Butler, who's the cameraman, and Pat, and we worked together, and I did sketches, yes, and like I said, we studied West Side Story for that one number, and I think a lot of it's very sloppy and thrown together, which I think is one of the reasons why it seems to appeal. It's not real slick. Everything's not perfect, you know.
But you're only shooting one camera, I assume, or am I wrong?
No, we shot one camera on certain numbers, but most of them we had several cameras.
You did?
Yeah. Peter Collister is here tonight too, who was on the set.
But with that, sometimes there are moving camera shots that are part of the musical numbers. So if you've got multiple cameras, do you remember how you were handling this?
Well, like in the dance contest, we had a lot of cameras because it was so chaotic. This last number was a lot of cameras. With You're the One That I Want, it was one camera. And with Summer Nights, I think we had pretty much maybe two cameras because we didn't want the the dolly to get in the way of the others.
When you were doing, I'm looking like for the Frenchie song in particular, where it starts.
That was one camera, yeah.
But the transition and how are you going to get in there and using sort of a semi-special effect, and then having Frankie Avalon in that other set.
Yeah.
Do you remember how that evolved for you?
Well, my original drawings had her looking at a jukebox and seeing the teen angel come out of the jukebox. And then we just got this idea. I'd seen, there's a young digital artist named Ron Hayes who had done a sequence in Demon Seed, which was about computers, and it was one of the first uses of computer graphics. And I asked him if he could do this effect to introduce Frankie, and so that's how it came about.
And do you remember also, just in terms of on that as an example of wardrobe as well? I mean, they've got these fabulous things that they're wearing, and do you remember how that all evolved?
Albert Walsky, our costume designer, came up with that idea. He just thought curlers were ugly, and so he thought if he made them into a little pyramid, it might, like a silver pyramid, it might be interesting. So that was his idea.
Do you remember, of all the musical numbers, which one was, for you, the most challenging?
Well, I think the drive-in was challenging because we didn't know what we were going to put on the screen. We had sent away for 20 popcorn trailers, period ones, and that night we still didn't know what we were going to show. So I stopped production and ran all 20 and spotted the hot dog jumping in the bun. And I asked the playback operator if he could figure a way to sync the ending of the song with that. And we were also shocked and surprised to see that worked. Because normally, you'd do that way in advance, you'd have it all worked out, but there were a lot of happy accidents on this, so.
In terms of putting together your cast, were you making decisions, particularly for the secondary, I'm going to call them the secondary roles, not your leads? Did they have to sing? Was that part of where you were thinking? Did you sort of like only see people who could, or were you,
Well,
net was bigger than that?
I think we just tried to cast the actors and figured we'd figure out how to do the singing. Some of them had been on the Broadway stage, and so had done that. And of course, Olivia was a big pop star at the time. John had done singing. Most of the cast had already sung. So.
And Stockard as well?
Stockard had done singing, but we didn't know she was that good. I mean, she really acted that song, which was fantastic. She told me that she was approaching the part like Lady Macbeth. And I asked her, did you break down your script into actions and beats? And she said, of course. So that song, if you watch it, I mean, every line has a meaning to it. She really played that well.
You credit Nina Foch as one of your teachers as you started
Best
here.
one ever.
And what did she, when you were at USC, do you remember some of the things that you still use that she taught you?
Well, yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, Jeremy, because if you go to ninafoshproject.com, you can see her work. George Lucas financed a DVD, 4 hours of her class, which she passed away in 2008, and we luckily preserved her work, and she was the best teacher I ever had, and I learned so much from her. And one of the things that she taught was always have an intention and an action and an obstacle, and break down every line in a script for your actors. You don't often use it, but if you write beside each line what their action is, it's helpful when on the set, if they have a problem, you can just come up and whisper something to them. And I'm sure you've used this a million times.
I luckily would argue with Nina about, do we have to do that for every single line, or could it be just for part of the scene? And she would look at me with those harsh, direct, laser beam eyes and say, every line. Yes,
and her son is here tonight. Dirk DeBrito's back there. Yay, Dirk. We have such a great audience here.
In terms of your rehearsal with the actors, not with the musical numbers, did you have any time for that, and did you want it?
Rehearsal not with the musical numbers. Well, yes, we had a script that was written by Alan Carr and Bronte Woodard. They were trying to improve the Broadway play, which did not need improving. And our producer, our casting director, Joel Thurm, who's here tonight too. Joel, are you there? In the back there. He he came up with this idea when we were sitting around the table, when we would read the script that had been improved, supposedly, and it wasn't working, to go back and have a secret copy of the play that we would go to. And so we would slowly work our way back to the actual play. And that was his idea, and it worked.
This being the first time, what was your process when you would walk on the set? How, and has that changed?
Well, I was just with Pat and Bill Butler, because Bill had shot Jaws and he was a real professional, and Pat and I were like babes in Toyland because we had not done a film. So we were really relying on Bill, and he was our guide, you know, in terms of setting up shots, because I had only worked in television where it was a square, as you remember. It was not wide, and this was suddenly a wide aspect ratio, and we had to figure out how to frame for that.
But how would you work with your actors in order to show Bill what he may then suggest to you?
Well, just sort of the way I did in television, which was just, you know, line it up and block it, and then he would say, well, maybe if you did it a little wider, it would work better. It was fairly similar to directing television, except just wider.
You know, thinking about your work, besides this, in addition to this film, and all of the other kinds of genres you've taken on, I remember once talking to John Cassavetes, and he was saying, you're about to do a film with, it's a period picture, and you've got kids, and you've got animals, so you're sort of on a suicide trip. Yeah. So here you are, I'm thinking about things like Honey, I Shrunk the Kid, I Blew Up the Kids.
Yeah.
You've got a little kid that you have to cast and work with and direct. And you've actually worked with lots of kids, as I think about it. Flight of the Navigator, your major star of that movie is that kid. What's been your process of finding the right kid?
Well, with Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, we cast twins so that there would be one that would always be available. And those kids were 2 years old, and they didn't even know they were in a movie. So we'd have to trick them into everything. And they learned quickly phrases like no rolling. When they'd say rolling, no rolling. And they'd learn phrases like, I want to go to my trailer. And we had to put the father off camera and play guitar songs that they liked to get them to look in certain directions. That was really, really hard. But most times, you know, like with Joey Kramer on Flight of the Navigator, he came in and he read and he was able to cry on cue. So, you know, he was like a professional.
Like, not a lot. In your casting process, what's the process? What do you do? How do you meet a person?
I really... it's funny that you're asking me these questions, because I've watched Jeremy do this on stage for Meet the Nominees over 20 years, and it's fun to be up here answering the questions. My casting process, they just come in and they read, or they videotape them, and I look at the tapes, you know.
And in the readings themselves, will you, in fact, redirect them? What's your process? If you want to find
usually,
out where you are.
well, you know, like most directors, in a casting session, this is something I learned from Nina, of course, was give them one little adjustment and see if they can do it. And if it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, just to see if they will follow your direction.
And in this movie specifically, let's look at a couple movies and say, what was a part that was a challenge for you where, and I'm even thinking for the kids, you know, part of our process sometimes is, and particularly even in casting, a doubt. I'm not sure. So I bring them back and, you know, repeated sessions. What gives you the confidence to say this twin, that actor? What makes you say it? Do you know?
I guess it's just an instinct. You just click. Like, for instance, in this movie, Frenchie came in and started talking with that voice, and we knew instantly she was the right person for it. A lot of the other people were obvious because they had done the play. In general, you just kind of feel it, I think. It's an instinct.
And were there in this one other, as you sort of go down the list of performers, Were there parts that you were more concerned with, either the two groups, the ladies or the guys that you found yourself? And did you want to put them together, or did you put them together before you said, this is the group?
Well, because a lot had worked on the play, they just came in and nailed it, you know. So I mean, they had done it so many times on stage that they knew more than I did about where the jokes were, so the casting all fell into place pretty easily. The part that was exciting to me was casting the people like Evard and Sid Caesar. I mean, I'd grown up watching them on TV, and suddenly to be there, it was very surreal to be directing them.
I've heard stories of that Sid was not your original choice.
Well, it was Alan Carr wanted to use Harry Reams from Deep Throat.
Do you know why?
Well, he just thought it'd be kind of interesting and sort of disruptive. And the studio got wind, and they said, no way. And so Alan felt so bad that he paid Harry $5,000 out of his own pocket as a kind of like a sorry about that thing. But we're glad that we got Sid Caesar because he was perfect.
You've worked, and I wasn't kidding about animals, you've worked with lots of them, from talking pigs to Jed, who we both have in common.
That's right. You did Journey
correct.
of Natigan with the dog, the same dog we used in White Fang, and then Journey of
Natigan.
Natigan.
What's been I know that becomes an incredible challenge because everybody who has the animals says, can you do this? And the people always say, of course we can do it. And you walk on the set and you find that they can't. How have you dealt with it in order to be able to handle it?
Well, the biggest challenge I remember on Big Top Pee Wee, we wanted this, let's see, I think it was, the pig was after the hippopotamus. They were in love, and they were chasing them. And you had to hit the hippopotamus to make it run, and you had to have a clicker to make the pig run. And you had to time it so that they looked like they were chasing each other and make sure they didn't get too close because the hippo would eat the pig. So that kind of keeps you up late at night.
Did you, and I'm interested in, particularly when you have these kinds of complex sequences, the storyboarding process that you go through. Do you make sketches yourself? Do you hand them to artists to then come back? How do you work this?
I love to make the sketches myself, but in some cases I need an artist to do something. If it's a special effects sequence where it has to be really precise, I like to do little drawings that are clear what's going on, but not enough for a visual effects house to take it over and do it. So we bring in people for that. And
how will you work it? Because in the process, sometimes you're seeing another artist's vision of how a scene might work. In fact,
it's great. I mean, often they come up with really ideas I would never think of. So, I love storyboard artists. It's fun to have several storyboard artists take a sequence and break it down, and then you can pick and choose the moments that work.
So sometimes you'll employ 2 or 3 others for the same sequence?
Yes.
And then you'll
pick and choose.
In the whole issue of locations and production design, because I'm also thinking of Honey with the Kid, the nature of White Fang, the Navigator and the design of the spaceships in that. These are all, and of course the locations that you chose here. What's your process of working with a production designer to get it a style that you want?
Lots of photos from magazines and other movies. In the case of the location manager, our location manager is here tonight, right? Are you still here?
I'm here, Randall.
Yay, right here, our location manager for this big. And you hire great people who can find terrific locations, and that helps.
There seems to be some studio work that was done here as well,
yes,
and exteriors as well as interiors. What made you make those choices, or do you remember?
I think just what was easiest. I mean, if we were there and we were shooting and there was a way to shoot it there, we did, but sometimes there wasn't, and we'd go to the stage, break it down that way.
In scouting locations for something like a period picture, which is White Fang, here you've got do you remember how you went through the process of, and in fact, you built cities, I assume?
Yes, we
towns.
built some towns up in Haines, Alaska, which are still there. They're using it as a tourist attraction now. But that was really, really fun to build a town. And we built it with a ship there, so it looked like it was a wharf, but it was just a flat. But it had a great scope to it, and very exciting because we did it in the wintertime, and then we came back in the spring, and the same town was there, and we closed. That was an interesting thing. We closed the picture down for a couple months and came back, which is never done, but it had been set up that way by a guy who was fired.
But initially, that was the plan.
Yeah, it was a plan that this guy came up with, Adam Marins, who's now a producer, and it was a brilliant plan because we got this great look of winter and spring, but it cost money, and he was let go.
In integrating special effects, visual effects, which you are, I mean, some of us in this audience know that you every year are responsible for showing us through Digital Day the newest technologies that our art and science has developed, and you really are an expert in this. And I can see even your own work, it evolving in terms of what was available at that time and what is available now. How has your process gone to be able to engage in, I would like this, to be accomplished. I assume, for example, there's once in White Fang, there's an endless line of people climbing up into the snow, and I assume that part of that was a mix of real people and something else. And where and how do you develop this? Where is that?
Well, luckily, I have a brother who's a visual effects supervisor, Jeff Kleiser, right over here. And as I've gone through my career, he has always let me know what the latest things are. Like when we did Flight of the Navigator, the whole chrome ship that changed shape was something that he had been working at in a commercial, and we actually hadn't been done, and we figured out how to do it. And James Cameron later did it in the next year in Terminator 2. And he also worked on Blue Lagoon, where he made the phosphorescent swimming underneath the water work in an optical process. So, and then he turned me on to the Oculus Rift about 4 years ago, something like that, and that got me all interested in doing virtual reality.
You've just done a series and are still working with that series.
We're almost done.
And how many episodes have you done so far?
We have shot 12 episodes, and they're each 5 minutes each. But you wear the headset and you become a character in it. And it's so exciting because we're working with spatialized sound. And when an actor looks into a lens, it looks like they're looking at the lens. And in VR, when they look at the lens, it looks like they're looking at you because you're in the space, especially in 3D with spatial sound. Because if somebody's talking here and someone's talking just next to them, you can hear it coming from two different sources. It's very, very specific, and it makes it very real.
And talk about sound itself and how you approach sound. Not obviously this is a musical, but it seems to be an element, as I look at your pictures, that is an essential element for you, and I'm interested in when it enters your consciousness and how you develop it in your films.
Well, like most people say that sound is 50% of the film, and so I think that the most important thing is to have really clear dialogue, and radio mics are really helpful. I remember watching Robert Altman movies where he would have radio mics on all the actors and allow them to improvise, and then dial up the part that you want of what actor. And that I love doing. I did that in It's My Party, where we had a party sequence, and I gave all the actors bits to play, and then we would just dial it up as the camera would go by them, dial them up. And then we did it in one shot in Greece when the kids are dancing across the gymnasium, and we go from one dialogue to another with radio mics. That was all from watching Altman.
And in music's part in it, well, actually, I want to deal with one piece of dialogue. The voice of your computer in Flight of the Navigator. How did you make the choice? For those who don't know, it's actually an extremely amusing voice and a surprising voice, and I didn't recognize it initially. But what was your process?
We were trying to make it look like it was an alien voice, so we did all kinds of experiments with those vocal things that people use who lost their voice, and we tried playing voices fast and slow and through filters and everything. And finally we ended up with Pee Wee Herman.
And how did that happen?
I guess I must have met Paul somewhere, and I asked him if he'd like to do a voice because we were stuck. We couldn't figure out what voice to do, and he was interested in kid films, and so he said yes. And that, of course, working with him on that led to me directing him in Big Top Pee-wee. So, having cast him, did you pre-record that material because the young boy who's in Flight of the Navigator is having, obviously dialogue relationship with this computer, or did that come post? I think it was post. Yeah, I think we just had like a script supervisor saying the lines to the boy, and then because we only found Paul like late in post when we couldn't figure out what to do, as I recall. Yeah.
Do you listen to music while you're making a movie?
I love to, yes, and it's fun to have music on the set too. I think it calms the actors down.
And have you used that to play for setting a mood?
Yeah.
And how has that worked?
Great. I mean, it keeps everyone calm and relaxed. I think I love having a relaxed set. I can't imagine how directors work where they scream and yell on the set. I've heard about different people. I don't imagine how you could get anything done that way. Can you?
But then what do you do with your own tension? I mean, not every time you're going to have a hippo charging that you know it's going to make you tense. How do you handle it when you've got these 10 more shots to do, the sun's going down? What do you do?
Well, I project calmness, but inside I'm like crazy, and like I really need to get a massage at the end of the day because it's. But I always try to appear like I'm very calm.
Does anything get you angry?
Not so far. No, I've never blown up on the set. No, I keep it all internal.
And at what point do you start to walk into the editing room?
Oh, immediately. I mean, especially today with the way you can do it. At the end of the day, you can have a cut sequence, as you well know. And I love that. But there is something to be said about sitting in an editing room with a cam and an editor and giving 10 cuts and then reading a bunch of magazines and thinking about it and then seeing it and having the time to think about the cuts rather than have it just bam like that.
And do you step away? I mean, in the process, some directors like to be there all the time within the editing room. What's your process?
I like to sit there the whole time. I like to edit myself actually too. Now that it's so easy with digital, I like to take sequences and work on them myself.
Were there sequences in Grease that didn't ended up on the floor, and what were they?
Only one. There was a scene when we ran the movie for Michael Eisner, head of Paramount, right after Kanicki throws the milkshake, Rizzo throws a milkshake at Kanicki. They run out of the shop, and Eisner said, "Well, what were they arguing about?" And he said, "Well, some kind of like little problem." He said, "Well, I think we need to film a scene about that." So the writers wrote a scene. We went and shot it. I don't remember anything about it because when we put it in the movie, it just stuck out like a sore thumb. Alan Carr called it the Martin Scorsese scene, and we dropped it out. So I don't remember what it was about. That's the only thing we cut.
I watched a movie, just Getting It Right. Can you talk a little? I don't know how many people in this. How many people in the audience just maybe have seen this movie? It's called Getting It Right. We've got a couple viewers.
My brother.
No, we have two more.
Oh, yeah? Well, that was a wonderful movie. When I went to USC in the 60s, we watched movies like The Knack, Darling, Morgan, Alfie, all those films about misfits in the 60s in London. And I came across a novel called Getting It Right that had the same feel, and I really wanted to make it, and I got Jonathan Crane, Sally Kellerman's husband, to put up the money for it, and we went to England and shot it with Helena Bonham Carter and Lynn Redgrave and Sir John Gielgud. It was the most wonderful experience because I was taking this idea and making it exactly the way I wanted to with no interference, and I love the way it turned out. It was a comedy, and it felt just like those movies that I I watched in college.
And the movie has a different texture to it than a lot of your other films. In a way, it's quieter, and it's also sort of it deals with the issues of love and maturity in relationships. While you were making it, why was it such a enjoyable experience for you?
Because I was working with all English actors, and they were and a crew, English crew, they were amazing. The actors just hit it every time. I didn't have to do much, just aim and shoot, no direction really. And the crew was so fascinating because they would be talking on a Friday night about going to the opera or going to theater, as opposed to taking their Winnebagos to go water skiing. So it was just this very classy kind of experience, and being around all these English actors was really, really cool.
As you look at your own work now, what would you change in terms of any of the films that you're looking at?
Well, when I see films like tonight when I was watching Grease, I saw, man, I cut the actors off too much at the feet. Yeah, they should see more feet, and there's a lot of bumpy things. I saw lots and lots of things all the way through, but in a way, I think that's what it is, and fine,
What's the first place you go to when you walk on the set? Where do you go first?
The catering truck.
Good. No. And what do you have?
No, I'm kidding. I go to exactly where I think the first shot will be, and start to plan out the day. Yeah.
And will you then have your actors? Then what's next? I really am interested. If we were following you now, tomorrow, if you're shooting another episode of Defrost, besides the fact that we can't be anywhere because we'll be seen.
Right. Well, table read is best to start with, where everyone sits around the table and works out the beats of the scene, like most directors work that way, and then you put it on their feet and try to work out the blocking, and just in the case of virtual reality, it's sort of like doing a theater in the round, because there is no angle. It's all everywhere, and you do have the camera in one spot, but in general, I always try to move the camera a little bit and have the actors move to it, so it's really interesting staging. It's fun to shoot in a 360, and very much like a combination of play and movies.
As you look at the various stages, from working with the writer to being on the final color timing, which of these stages do you find, for you, the most enjoyable?
I think the fine cut.
And why?
Because that's when the movie comes alive. I mean, when you're writing the movie 3 times, they say, right? You write it, you shoot it, and then you edit it. And the third time you write is the editing, and the fine cut is when you take a few frames off here, a few frames off there, and then suddenly it becomes alive. It becomes the movie that you want.
And will you show this movie to friends before you start showing it to the general public? And how do you get yourself confident enough to say, this is my version, or this is the version?
Well, yeah, I do show it to friends, but then there's always the old standard, the whatchamacallit?
Yes, those screenings
I blocked it. Yeah, the test screenings, where you have 20 people from a mall come in and sit in the front row and watch it, and then they say, I didn't like that character, and then the studio executives go, we better cut that character, things like that. That's the worst.
And have you learned things from that, particularly because, some of your movies have been, well, I'll say more comic, so therefore you want to know if the laugh's working.
Well, what I've done in that case, when I was worried that that one person in the focus group would screw it up, I put cameras on the audience with infrared light, and so when there'd be jokes, I could show the producers, okay, this joke works. Look, everyone's laughing.
When did you do that?
That was done with a movie I did called Love Wrecked. And it was just to make sure that they didn't try to cut some of the jokes.
And where were, if it was showing out, where were the cameras?
They were on the sides, you know, and they had infrared light on the audience, and then I was up in a booth where I could see all the audience, and we recorded it so that it was in sync to the movie.
Did the studio know you were doing this?
Oh yeah, they paid for it.
And were they excited by the process? How did
They were
respond?
confused. They didn't know if it was worth it, and you know, was it worth the money? And I said, just trust me and let's do it. And we did it, and it was really for me, not for them, just to prove that certain jokes shouldn't go.
Is there a point when you can let go of the film? Is there a point where
Well, you have to, as you know, you have to let it go, and that's just the way movies are. You know? Although today, now you can go back and change everything. You know, with digital technology, you can have a preview and change all the prints the next day. You know, that's what's amazing.
The DCP we were just talking about. As you think about the newer generations, because I know you've taught as well, what are some of the things that you would say, I've learned, and I would like you to at least know this so that you can learn it?
I think mostly I would say to all students that I meet to make films that are not copying other movies, that are something that comes from them inside, something that moves them, something that's dangerous, something that they don't want to necessarily reveal, something that's painful or something that's emotional, something that's uniquely them. And then, in order to get it across, I would say, look at the Nina Foch DVD to learn how to express it.
Of the films that you've made, which were the ones that you would have said, I did that?
I'd say It's My Party and Getting It Right are the two that I'm most connected to.
Got it. Mm-hmm. And explain both. Why?
Well, Getting It Right because it was a tribute to those 60s movies, and It's My Party because it was a very personal film about an event that happened with a friend who took his own life after learning he was going to die of AIDS. And so it was an actual party that happened, and one of the people who was at the party is here, Cheryl back there. Cheryl. It was very emotional, and everybody who was at that party, it changed them. It was like such a dramatic and emotional event, and so making that movie was like sort of therapy.
As you look at movies that have touched you, besides these two that are more personal, what are the movies that you would say, these movies really influenced me?
The Ten Commandments, because Nina was in it, and the opening of the Red Sea was something that, as a 10-year-old, made me want to be a director. And recently, I just was totally in love with the movie Coco. I thought that was the most spectacular film I've seen in 10 years because of what the message it got across to kids about not being afraid of death, about thinking about family, and I just think that was such a responsible movie and so well done, too. And the director was one of Nina's students.
Amazing. Talk about the animation sequence that we just saw.
That was done by the guy who did Lady and the Tramp. And he kind of just did that all on his own. I mean, he took that little audio and came to us with it all done. I didn't really work with him at all. He just delivered it.
Were you surprised by some of it?
Yeah.
Because he mixes, all kinds of images. It's not just animated.
It was just out of the blue. He just dropped it on me, and I went, "Wow!" You know, I really had nothing to do with it.
And was he your choice, or did it come through the
You
studio?
know, I think it came through. Maybe Alan Carr had found him. That was happening when I was shooting, so I don't really know how that came about. Really.
Got it. In choosing color palettes, is that part of also your initial preparation? Is that something you deal with?
Well, yeah, especially in this movie, it was all pinks and bubblegum, and that was kind of the look of it. For White Fang, it was of course blues because of the snow, and each movie has its own flavor in a way, I could say.
And in that process, I'm interested in how you bring your team together and what you share with them. Because you did say photographs and you did say movies, but I'm curious whether you also say there's a style to this particular movie and what the language is that you might be using as you communicate to
The best artist I ever worked with was Nestor Almendros, the cameraman, and he approached every movie with a painter in mind. And when we did Blue Lagoon, he wanted to use Paul Gauguin as his guide. And he has a book called A Man and the Camera, where every chapter it talks about which artist he emulated. And I learned a lot from him about that. Watching movies that have the same style. I remember we watched Hurricane, the John Ford movie, to get ideas of camera moves and things like that. So watching movies, I think.
Talk about, you've taken two, I would think, very tough locations. I would assume that Blue Lagoon, particularly the stuff that had to be done on the water, was a difficult location, as clearly White Fang was as well. What's your experience when you are now in, not on a studio set, open the door and you're there? This is, you've got to walk here, you've got to fly here, you've got to move here. How do you keep the enthusiasm of everybody on these I think challenging locations?
When we shot Blue Lagoon, I went to Australia, and I met with crew members, and the first thing I asked them was, do you ever go camping? And if they said yes, then they got the job. And if they said no, they didn't, because we lived in tents during Blue Lagoon, and on a island that had no electricity or roads or water. We had to bring everything in. And so, just the sense of adventure. And same thing with White Fang. We also lived in trailers for White Fang. And again, we asked, did you camp?
Do you camp?
Do I camp? Not so much anymore. I kind of like room service.
In Blue Lagoon, working with these actors and dealing with the issue of nudity and non-nudity, how did you handle all of that?
Interestingly, we had a stunt double for Brooke, and Chris was fine doing whatever we needed, but with Brooke, we had a stunt double, and she broke her leg just before coming down to the island, and we were in Fiji, and we had no stunt double. So we asked a girl who's a dolphin trainer who couldn't catch dolphins, so we said, how would you like to be a stunt double? And so she said yes, and she was 35, and she was playing a 14-year-old. And it worked out okay. She also swam underwater, and when our caterer quit, she became the caterer as well. So she would make lunch and then swim naked and then go back and make dinner. So.
The issue of the hair in that movie, her hair, talk about it.
Well, we used toupee tape to tape her hair to her breasts, or a wig to her breasts. And years later, I met Heidi Fleiss, the madam, and she said when she saw Blue Lagoon, she got that idea, and she and all her friends would run around with toupee tape on their breasts. That sort of led her down the wrong path, I guess.
The relationships that you build with the family when you make a movie, and they're tight, and then you move on, and those relationships sort of separate,
right? And
then you reunite. Are there some people who you have either continually worked with, or you say, this is part of my family now?
Well, a lot of them are here tonight, yes. I think there are people that come back over and over again. They do feel like family. And it's great when you can work with them again. I love that, when you can have a group that you continue with.
Well, you've established an audience that is a part of your family here, and we thank you for making us often very happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. Nice job.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this exclusive discussion. You can watch the full video of the discussion on our website at dga.org/events. Past episodes of The Director's Cut are available wherever you listen to podcasts. and be sure to click subscribe so you won't miss an episode. If you're enjoying the podcast, please like, share, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.